In California, Mr. and Mrs. Livingston have a baby and find out he's born with no immunity. This means even the weakest germ can kill him. He'll have to live in isolation, and everything he touches must be cleaned first to keep him safe. Jimmy is placed inside a plastic bubble where he'll live for the rest of his life. This health problem makes Mrs. Livingston very protective of her son, and she doesn't even take him home until he's 4. When other kids try to meet him, she bursts their balloons to scare them away, saying the world is dirty and they'll never have to leave the house again. The Livingstons prepare the house for him. Jimmy's room is a big bubble, so he can walk around freely inside. There's a special hatch for receiving food and toys, and 2 pairs of extendable arms, so the parents can still show affection to their son. Mrs. Livingston takes good care of him and reads to him every night, but she also keeps him very sheltered. He's only allowed to read magazines and watch TV shows that have been approved by his religious mother. Mrs. Livingston also homeschools Jimmy with lessons that make him extremely patriotic, like her. Whenever the neighborhood kids come to the front yard, wrapped in bubble wrap to tease him, Mrs. Livingston scares them away with cold water. Jimmy is only fed his mom's homemade food, which barely has any taste because she doesn't approve of fat and sugar. She also gets upset when Mr. Livingston buys Jimmy a bicycle, thinking it could hurt him. When Jimmy turns 16, he gets an electric guitar instead of a car like other teens. One day, Jimmy is looking out the window and sees new neighbors moving in. They have a daughter named Chloe, and Jimmy immediately falls in love with her. Mrs. Livingston isn't happy about this and indirectly insults Chloe by telling Jimmy stories about boys who die from touching naughty neighbors. After that, Jimmy pretends to clean the window every day just to see her. This helps him go through puberty, and he starts waking up with something in his pants. The first time, he gets scared and hits it with a bat, so his mom calms him down and teaches him to say the Pledge of Allegiance until it goes away. Meanwhile, Chloe hangs out with friends from school who tease Jimmy and spread silly rumors about his condition. She scolds them and finally decides to introduce herself. Mr. Livingston opens the door carelessly, and Chloe follows the tube system to Jimmy's room, where she finds him falling out of the decontamination hatch. Jimmy gets nervous when he sees her up close and calls her a bad word his mother uses, not knowing what it really means. Chloe plays along and asks about his guitar, promising to visit again tomorrow. The next day, Jimmy teaches her how to play guitar, using the glove hands on the bubble, and recites the pledge whenever his body gets too excited. After that, Chloe starts visiting Jimmy often, and they have lots of fun together. Mrs. Livingston doesn't approve, but she can't find a good reason to stop them. On Jimmy's birthday, Chloe gives him a guinea pig inside its own bubble, and for Halloween, she brings kids and candy so Jimmy can experience the holiday. On Chloe's birthday, she sneaks into Jimmy's room while drunk, saying she wants a birthday kiss. She tries to enter the bubble, but passes out in the decontamination chamber. On Chloe's prom night, she shows Jimmy her beautiful dress, and he takes pictures, but he's sad to see her leave with her boyfriend, Mark, who damages the bubble with his cigarette. A few nights later, Jimmy looks out the window and sees Mark and Chloe kissing, which breaks his heart. The next day, Mrs. Livingston reminds him that all women will leave him someday. Later, Chloe comes to see Jimmy with big news. Mark has asked her to marry him, and the wedding will happen this weekend at Niagara Falls. Chloe wants to give Jimmy one last gift before leaving, putting it in the decontamination hatch, but Jimmy is hurt and ignores the box. Instead, he gives her the guinea pig back and tells her to leave. Chloe leaves in tears, prompting Jimmy to finally open the gift. To his surprise, he finds a homemade snow globe with the words, "I love you." Jimmy screams with joy and finally decides to take control of his life. He designs and builds a smaller bubble that allows him to leave home so he can stop the wedding. While his parents are sleeping, Jimmy tries to sneak out but falls and rolls downstairs. The noise wakes Mr. Livingston, but he stays in bed, silently encouraging his son. Once outside, Jimmy is excited by everything dog poop, the sun, and the fact that he can run. Eventually, he reaches the bus station and tries to buy a ticket, but he doesn't have enough money. While thinking of a new plan, he crosses the road and is hit by a bus. Luckily, his bubble saves him. The people on the bus check on him, and when they hear his goal, they agree to take him to Niagara Falls and help him onto the bus. At home, Mrs. Livingston discovers that Jimmy is gone and panics. She tries calling the police, but they don't take her seriously, so she makes her husband write a fake kidnap note. However, he signs it with the Jews, so it isn't taken seriously either. The couple decides to go look for Jimmy themselves and stop at the bus station, where the clerk tells them about the Niagara Falls plan. Back on the bus, Jimmy notices the group's uniforms, their song lyrics, how they share the same name, and the strange things their book promotes. This makes him realize they're a cult, but calling them that makes the group angry, and they kick him off the bus. Now alone in the desert, he has to run from wild animals. Eventually, he meets a biker named Slim who threatens him with a knife. Jimmy explains he can help him fix his bike, and Slim is so grateful that he agrees to give Jimmy a ride when he hears about his goal. Slim also shares that he used to be in love with a woman named Wildfire who left him for another man. Slim still wants to find that guy and kill him. Meanwhile, the cult reunites with their leader, who reveals a big prophecy painted on a rock. The chosen one will come with the holy word inside a living globe. The followers think this is Jimmy, so they get back on the road to find him. That night, Jimmy and Slim reach Las Vegas, and Jimmy is fascinated by all the attractions. He attends his first concert, where the crowd tosses him around like a ball, while Slim teaches him how to gamble at the casino. Slim also tells him what being with a woman is like. When Jimmy sees a scooter as a prize, he gambles until he wins it and leaves without Slim because he only has 2 days left. Soon, the Livingstons and the cult arrive in Las Vegas too. As soon as Slim sees the cult members, he remembers they left Jimmy in the desert and threatens to kill them. In return, the cult bus runs over his bike. A few hours later, the Livingstons are on the road and see Jimmy on the scooter. Mrs. Livingston forces her husband to turn the car and block the way, accidentally hitting the scooter in the process. Jimmy flies out, and his bubble makes him bounce for a while until he lands inside a train. He screams when he sees the people inside and learns they're part of a freak show run by Dr. Freak, who treats these people like slaves. Suddenly, the train stops, and Jimmy bounces out, finding Dr. Freak waiting. Jimmy laughs at his small size, and Dr. Freak furiously starts breaking a car's windows as a threat. When he finds out Jimmy is the bubble boy, Freak wants to include him in his show. Jimmy refuses, so Freak jumps on his bubble and insults him, saying no woman would ever love someone like him. Jimmy gets mad and pushes Freak off, causing him to bounce and crash into a big truck. As Jimmy prepares to leave, the other freaks want to follow, but he tells them they're free now and can do whatever they want, though he needs to finish his mission alone. Jimmy then takes a handcar on the train tracks, but it's too slow, so he stops at a restaurant to ask for help. Inside, he sees a sheriff and some rednecks making fun of a man named Push Pop. Jimmy defends him, and the men start teasing Jimmy instead. When they hear he has no immunity, they mistakenly think he has a disease and run away, leaving Jimmy inside. As they slam the door, a lamp falls and starts a fire. Jimmy panics, but Push Pop shows up at the back door and helps him escape in his ice cream and curry truck. The ride is wild, and Jimmy almost falls out, but they get away just before the restaurant explodes. Meanwhile, the Livingstons reach the train and ask Freak about Jimmy. Mrs. Livingston treats Freak like a child and offers candy for information. In the end, Mrs. Livingston calls Chloe and tells her to stay away from her son, insulting her without hesitation. While they're distracted, the other freaks steal the Livingstons' car. Since Freak wants his group back, he steals a truck and agrees to leave with the couple. Back to Jimmy, he shares his goal with Push Pop, who agrees to take him to Niagara Falls. Jimmy falls asleep during the trip and has a strange dream about Chloe being attacked by dinosaurs. The movie ends. Thanks for watching.